Welcome to the Beats from the True Wellness Center. I'm your host, Kelly Kennedy, and the Beats is truly from my heart to yours to help you empower and inspire you to learn how the body actually does work. I am bringing you my friends, my colleagues, the most incredible minds from around the world that I have been able to learn from, and I want to share them all with you. So that's what the Beats is really about, is teaching people what I've been able to learn about how the body works and trying to give that to you in a very simple and practical way to give you things to change your life, because you got this. This is all about you and having the ability to heal your own body from within. And that's really my message, is from my heart to yours. Welcome to the Beats. Welcome to learning how your body works, and welcome to opening your heart. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time and your attention as we focus in on this week's episode of The Beats. Welcome back to The Beats with Kelly Kennedy, your host from my heart to yours. And my heart is super full today. I mean, outside of Ian and Dr. Schaffner being here, these are like my favorite people on the planet. I am so thrilled to be here doing this podcast with Silas Kennedy, who have not met, maybe, Dr. Gerry Curatola, I'm sure most of you know, and Desiree De Spong from New Zealand. We are here to talk about the concepts of biological dentistry and bioregulatory medicine and how it's a lifelong foundational process. So Dr. Curatola has worked with each one of us, and so in different phases of biological dentistry. So I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity, since we're all together, to highlight that. Do you want to say hello?
Yes.
Because that's probably the longest you've ever gone without talking.
Very funny. Keep thinking Silas should put the things over here.
Oh, don't give him any ideas, please, Dr. Gerry.
I knew he was going to do that at one point. The rabbit ears. We were just talking before this program and about how medicine is so subspecialized and how nothing comes together. And I shouldn't say nothing comes together, but often a patient is treated by different practitioners in different specialties that don't talk to each other, and as a result, the coordination of care doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And there are patients with autoimmune disease, Lyme disease, cancer even, God forbid, and all these other things that unfortunately go to different specialties, including biologic dentistry. And the biologic dentists are not connected to the other therapies that the patient may be undergoing and other treatments and other specialties.
It's exactly well said. And what Desiree and myself and True Wellness is all about is, as a medical concierge, overseeing that and making sure everybody stays in their lane, but everybody communicates. Communication is the key, and everybody knowing what all the other pieces are doing. And it allows it to flow well, and then you see wellness, and you see recovery, and you see regenerative medicine at work.
Right.
I mean, really, the body heals itself, and that's what we're all here to exemplify. And so we're going to start with Silas' story, because he's the youngest, and we're going to work our way up. So Silas was born at home. He was breastfed and for about 9 months or 8 months or something like that. And then he was doing a dental cleaning a couple years ago, and we noticed that he had a lip tie. And so Dr. Curatola said, okay, let's bring him into the center and let's do his lip tie. So we arranged it. It was like 6 months in advance. We took him out of school. We drove up. And then Dr. Curatola took Silas back, explained the whole procedure. And Silas, do you remember what you said to Dr. Curatola?
No.
The first time?
No, Mom, that was a year ago.
Well, what
Not that long ago. But I guess in the life of a 9-year-old, that's like 1/9 of your life.
Exactly. It was a long time ago. So Dr. C sat you down in the chair, just to remind you, and we were like, okay, we're going to do this. And he had never had so much as blood drawn in his life. Like, this dental procedure outside of a dental clean, he had never had anything. So Dr. C explained the whole thing, and Silas goes, Dr. Gerry, I don't really like the sound of that. And then I started to cry because of what you said. Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, he has to be ready for this. And it's really, and the worst thing that a doctor could do I remember even as a child, I had a dentist as a child who was a family friend, which made it even worse because I couldn't say I don't want to go back there anymore because he was dating my aunt.
And this happens a lot. I hear people say that a lot. The dentist
And
is
they
my
have
friend.
traumatic experiences from childhood. You know, when I was Silas's age and I was having a filling done, and he wasn't using an anesthetic at all, and he was doing a filling, and he said, "Just squeeze my arm if it hurts." And I was like punching him in the ribs, and he kept going. And so, you know, a relationship between a doctor and a patient, any patient, Silas, you, any of us, is a relationship of trust. And if you don't have the trust, then there isn't a cooperation of care, and you create an experience for a very bright, very sensitive young man. No, you're not a man yet. Young boy. You know, for as a boy to have an experience like that, where somebody's forcing something on you, would be absolutely terrible for the rest of his life. Not just not trusting the dentist, but not trusting just about any healthcare provider. So, but finish the story.
Well,
He did come back.
And just
He got his nerve up.
there's more.
And there's
Just-
more. Go ahead, Silas.
Just as it, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. For me, as a body worker, as a therapist, and knowing the fascia and how traumas lay into the fascia, and here we were cutting his fascia, I cried so much that day because I said, who does that? Who sits across a 9-year-old and says, and what your words were, never let a practitioner or any doctor ever touch your body, Silas, until you're ready.
Yes.
And I was like, you just drilled into my kid's nervous system the best lesson he could have to set him up for future successes for everything he ever does. Because now he knows when I'm ready, I'm ready. And so about a year later, we arranged for him to come back to the city, and Dr. Rayo, the airway specialist, was available to do this laser therapy. And it was very simple. How did it go for you? How was it? I mean, you were 9 when it happened. You weren't a baby. I know a lot of babies have this done when they're firstborn. Was it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Did it hurt?
Did it hurt? Be honest.
Like a 3.
It hurt like a 3.
3 out of 10 we got.
A 3 out of 10. It was a little bloody. I think that was the.
But you know what I want to talk about? Why those things are necessary. Yeah. He was terrific, and Dr. Rayo got it done in no time. But we see a tremendous amount of lip tie and tongue tie that not only affects actually young children, even infants, the ability to latch onto a mother's breast and breastfeed, to allow proper palatal development so they don't have breathing and airway problems that are primarily caused by upper airway resistance in the mouth. So if you don't latch onto a mother's breast, you end up with a vaulted palate rather than a flat palate. And we breathe through this space, and if you have a high palate, the amount of space you have to breathe is limited. So these are the things that we look for from birth. And we actually do these procedures in the hospital now. And the laser that was used, by the way, is light. We didn't cut anything on Silas. We used a light to literally vaporize the tissue. And this laser that we have does terrific things because it releases it and it separates the tissue and it helps it to regenerate even faster than by mechanical incision. And so Silas did great, but it is an important lesson for everyone to know. Never let your child go through a procedure because the doctor says so. Allow your child to participate in that process because there's a spirit. This is why I love biologic medicine, by the way. Yeah. Is because we all believe it's all about that life force that each of us has.
Yeah.
And we're incorporated in this
bag.
Paul says the tent of the body, you know. And so there's this beautiful life force in this boy that is bright and sensitive and conscious and aware that we have to respect as doctors.
And he would have gone into sympathetic tone had we done it before he was ready, which would have caused his whole system be in contraction for who knows how long until. And now what we've been able to do is continue to work his myofunctional therapy and fascia, because it's not just here it affected here. And what, as his mom, I mean, we only did that in like the beginning of June. and he had a huge space between his two front teeth, and look at it now. It's like barely there now. And it's allowing the lack of crowding because that was impeding, like Dr. Gerry said, the impeding of the palate to expand. And now this is going to allow his whole head and neck to properly shift and develop as he ages. So anything else you want to say about the experience, Mr. Kennedy? I almost called you Dr. Kennedy.
President Kennedy, what would you like to say?
Lord Silas, is there anything else you would like to say?
No.
Okay, thank you so much.
He's also a big Revitin fan.
Oh yeah,
He's a big Revitin fan.
No, we don't.
He did the best
And
commercial when he. What did you say?
What did you say about
Revitin?
Revitin? What do you say about Revitin? Come on.
I don't know.
Really? Revitin, it's more than. Say it.
Revitin, it's more than a toothpaste.
Excellent.
More than a toothpaste.
More than
I
a
love that.
toothpaste. And we're going
It
to talk
is.
about Revitin at the end because
It
this
is.
is about foundation health. Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Why don't you go
Bye.
off
Great
camera?
job.
Thank
Great
you.
job. You know, it's interesting that we were bringing Silas on because one of the things that we do in biologic dentistry is we look at root causes, right? Like biologic medicine, we look at root causes of disease. And you were talking about sympathetic and parasympathetic, and then I immediately thought of Desiree because she, not only in her amazing experience as a lymphatic drainage person, as a therapist, but her work in developing FLOWpresso, which I know you want to talk about, has been so instrumental for me because everyone comes into a dental office in sympathetic mode.
Yeah, 100%.
Either they're sympathetic because of, fear of pain, fear of money, fear of fear, and just fear, because of the healthcare environment we're in. So one of the first things we do, and we were talking about this yesterday, is we put people on FLOWpresso before they go into the dental chair.
Yeah.
And it gets them in a completely different head, which makes my job as a practitioner so much easier when they're in parasympathetic, when they're in relaxed. And that's when we heal. We heal and we regenerate, and everything is about regenerative medicine. And we regenerate when we're in a parasympathetic state. So getting the patient out of sympathetic into parasympathetic before the procedure is just as important as after a procedure. Whether it is a restorative procedure, a surgical procedure like cavitation surgery, or anything at all.
Honestly, if it's just a cleaning.
Yeah.
Because as a practitioner, I remember when I learned about the dental piece in this, Ayn and I went to that first class, and we were like, crap, we got to be the people that send people to the dentist. Nobody likes to go to the dentist. Why do we have to do something that causes people that they know they're going to put resistance and blockades up?
And 90% of toxicity and inflammation in the human body comes from the mouth.
And it affects your gut, and we've talked about this as like episode 400 or something. No, it's not. It's episode 110 or something. But if you don't know anything about it, go to episode 1. Because guess who the guest was? Dr. Gerry Curatola.
I was the first guest, that's right.
Of course, because I knew in order to educate people about how the body really heals, they had to understand that all health starts in the mouth. And that there was no way to get past that bridge, just like Ayn and I learned all those years ago. Like, you got to address the dental piece. If you want full resolution, if you want to be in regenerative mode, not that you can't feel better without handling your teeth, you can, but can you be curative? Can you be regenerative without it? We would say no, because it's a blockade to the autonomic nervous system, which is the only thing that heals. So, blockades to nervous systems are not so accessible as they are here in the United States to remediate them. And Desiree has been stuck in her country for a couple of years, and she'd had some of it done, and she could never finish it until this weekend. And so, tell us about that experience.
It was amazing. I didn't get offered FLOWpresso though. Clearly you thought I had a good enough parasympathetic.
She's the FLOWpresso inventor, and she wasn't on FLOWpresso before her biologic dentistry. There you have it. There you have it,
So she had a mouthful, not a mouthful, she had like 6 amalgams left.
It's like the shoemaker with holes in his shoes.
Yeah, it was. So you had 6 amalgams.
Correct.
And no root canals, no teeth ever pulled out of her mouth, so there was no options for cavitation. And what did it okay, so your friend had been telling you for years you're going to feel different when you got your amalgams out. Did you believe me?
I wasn't 100% convinced that it would be to the degree I did. It was certainly, I knew it was going to make me feel better, but we saw it after one day. It was phenomenal. So we did the left side first.
Right.
And there was quite a large one. Yeah.
Right, I mean left.
That
we did the left side. So we never
I don't look at the camera, I look right touch.
Yeah.
It's this one that has the problem right now. So, and this one was quite a large one, and you took quite a time sorting this out. But that next morning when I woke up and looked in the mirror, the difference between my two, we took a photo of the right to the left side, was phenomenal. It was kind of mind-blowing to actually see. And then the nasal drip and everything that was going on as well. And then, of course, the next day we did the right, and then my nasal drip started straight after we'd finished. And then the next day I was a little bit, well, we were on the boat, so we got lovely fresh air and got outside, which was fantastic. But today I've got this clarity that I thought I was pretty good. I'm running a company and doing everything I do, but the clarity today is again on another level. So just even that has been amazing.
I've seen a change in the color in your face.
Yeah.
And the lack of, like, her wrinkles are
And
just
you
like,
never-
I know, Kate.
You would
don't,
never think
don't get a
that- wait a
facelift,
minute.
get your teeth done.
yeah.
So there were 6 teeth, and I was going over yesterday. In those 6 teeth, we look at surfaces, right? Some teeth can have a 1 surface filling, but some teeth can have 4 surfaces covered, or even up to 5 surfaces, 4 sides and the top. So, you know, you see these large amalgams that have the equivalent of 2 thermometers or 3 thermometers worth of mercury in them.
Yeah.
Because people don't think, they think it's an inert thing you stick in. When I was in dental school, they said, oh, the mercury is magically locked in. And I didn't believe it, that the mercury is magically locked in the filling, it doesn't come off. And then I went on the Dr. Oz show, and we had a mercury vapor analyzer over a tooth that was in a box, a glass box. The tooth with the amalgam was in there, and there was a toothbrush on top. They were brushing the tooth and measuring the mercury vapor coming off. Wow. So, you know, we're energy beings, right? We're all a bunch of spinning electrons. And when we have toxicity, it doesn't only affect you biologically and biochemically. And by the way, mercury is the worst for your thyroid. And it's right here. And of course it's neurotoxic. First thing I said on Dr. Oz is mercury is the most neurotoxic element on Earth. And the idea that it continues to be allowed to be used in 2022, the FDA, by the way, just banned it in children and pregnant women here in the States. Whoopie-doo.
Wow. Well,
that
that's
should have been
good, at
100
least.
years ago.
At
It's
least
a step in
that's
the right.
happening.
It's
Yes.
a step in the right direction. But the reality is the dentists that remove these amalgams every day without taking precautions, the minute you stick a dental drill into an old amalgam filling, it makes a cloud of invisible mercury vapor. It's actually been measured. There's a video called The Smoking Tooth on YouTube. That
We'll put a link to it.
Yeah, the smoking tooth, if you don't believe mercury comes off. And it's a bioburden, it's a toxin, but energetically it affects you too. So you have a biologic level, you have a biochemical level, which is hormonal channels and things like that. And a lot of people with hypothyroidism from this type of toxicity. And then you have an energetic level, which is what you were experiencing. And then and then of course in biologic medicine, we believe in a psycho-emotional level, which is powerful for health and self-regulation. And then even a spiritual level, that connection from here to source, which people who are connected, they're so much easier to treat than people who are cut off over here and think like this is all, they're an island. And we're not an island, we're all connected to source. And so I felt really good treating you, and it was a pleasure you were a great patient, by the way.
Even without
She was an amazing patient.
She knows what
And way too often, healthcare providers don't give themselves the care they need.
Yeah. That's true.
And that care is also on those 5 levels: spiritual, psycho-emotional, energetic, all the care on those 5 levels. And so dentists, often, and what's interesting, I came out of dental school in 1983, and I was 10 years old. 10 years old. I actually have my 65th birthday coming up, everybody.
Yes, he does.
In November. And
so does Desiree. They share a birthday.
we have the same birthday.
It's crazy. It's so good. And my husband's a Scorpio, his wife's a Scorpio. It's like too much. But
we congregate.
Yeah, I want to mention about the hypothyroidism and why, because I know a lot of people listening to this, why? Because of the location of mercury, first of all, the amalgam fillings are 51% mercury, why they think they're self-contained. And I just want to bring up, it's not just the dental probe, right, Dr. C? It's also like if they drink something hot, they drink something cold, if they chew, doesn't a little mercury gas come out?
A lot of people grind their teeth in their sleep.
So a little mercury gas is coming out.
Yes.
And that's affecting.
And mercury particles. Actually, mercury particles.
And isn't that why mercury fillings eventually have to be replaced down the road, because they do tear away, but they don't maybe break away as much as maybe some of the resins. Right. Which is why.
Well, the resins also wear too, and that's another whole hot potato, because
it is a hot potato.
A lot of the tooth-colored fillings have BPA, like plastic water bottle BPA. They have BPA because it's a bisphenol A glycidyl methacrylate, a really kind of weird chemical that makes this tooth-colored resin that dentists use in replacement of amalgams. And so I was blowing the whistle on that, because BPA is a terrible endocrine disruptor linked to prostate cancer in men and breast cancer and ovarian cancer in women and all these other kinds of problems. So we actually want to remove old composite fillings, which are bis-GMA resin.
Which you can do a test for to find out if you're dealing with this. But if you don't have any fillings in your mouth, silver fillings, and you're like, well, why might I still have hypothyroidism, or why might I be dealing with thyroid issues? Do the toxicity test to see if you're dealing with BPAs, and then look at that with a biological dentist. Right. But from an amalgam perspective.
But one of the things I wanted to add is that now we have BPA-free resin.
Yes.
So, and I introduced a product about 9 years ago from Germany. It's called Voco Admira Fusion. And Voco Admira Fusion is it's almost like a liquid ceramic. So it's been very, very widely adopted by the biologic dentistry community, and there are several other newer composites that are BPA free, and it's important to have that. But in the 10 years ago, people were getting their amalgams out, and they were sticking BPA in. So taking mercury out, putting BPA in, substituting chemicals. And even though I do have to full disclosure, I think mercury is much worse for the body because you can't get rid of it.
It's hard to get rid of.
It's very hard to get rid of. You can take up to 2 years because it goes right past the blood-brain barrier.
And it's not that it ever gets out of your body. Let's just be clear about that, because in Pennsylvania, we have the 3rd highest airborne level of mercury in the air. So when I go outside and breathe, I've got some, which is why our thing is you got to move your toxins out faster than they're throwing them at you. And you always have to be in this state. But I want to go back to the thyroid for a minute. The other reason that the mercury is so bad is because mercury is an antagonist to selenium. Selenium is what your thyroid uses to convert T4 to T3, the bioactive available thyroid globulin that our body needs. And when you have mercury in your mouth, it pushes the selenium out, which is why so many people. Selenium also has antiviral properties and is deeply parasympathetic. So by having all this, it creates this sympathetic charge in your body. And so if you're dealing with, I have so much energy, I just don't know what to do with it, I never relax, you probably have some heavy metal toxicity in there. Yes. And so one of the things I want to highlight as far as what Dr. C said and what I would like the world to be prepared for is that I have been preparing for her to get her amalgams out, because she is one of the most connected people I know. And now that this veil of mercury has come out of her body, sit back and relax, because the flow state's going to occur everywhere you go, because we together as a team and as a community in bioregulatory medicine know that this is the wave of the future, that light therapy, frequency is what heals, but you got to get rid of the blockades to allow the body to heal. And whether it's the lip foramen that's causing your body not to expand and causing your cranium not to get all that it needs through your craniosacral rhythms, whether it's scars on your fascia, you've got to address the blockades to allow the body to regenerate.
Right.
So can I just, so for people in New Zealand, biological dentistry is a newish thing. So I think it's really important you understand to the degree this is done. So, when I was put in, I had oxygen, I had a dam put over the actual tooth to protect me from, I believe, any of the mercury getting into my throat. And then there was an extraction fan as well. So when these were being removed, there's quite a process to it. It's not just a take it out. And one of the things that came out of the tooth on the right here was that I actually had bacteria. I had a cavity in the back of it. And, that was just chipping away, well, not chipping away, but, deteriorating one of my other teeth,
Yeah.
that word. And so, that wouldn't have helped me from a health perspective, so when you uncover all this, all of a sudden you're starting to find these other issues going on that you didn't even know, and no scan was picking it up. We did a whole lot of scans and a whole lot of photos.
I had no idea that would happen. I was blown away yesterday when I was like, what do you mean a cavity can grow underneath where there's a filling?
It's so common. There are people that have amalgam fillings for 50 years in their mouth. And the dentist takes an x-ray, and you cannot see decay under a metal filling because the metal filling blocks the x-ray from detecting the area of decay. I've become pretty sleuthy over the years after 39 years in private practice.
Since you were 10.
Since I was 10. It's going to be 40 years in June. My 40th anniversary as a private practitioner is June 2023. So I'm glad you brought that up, Desiree, because people should know that there is a process. And you were talking about selenium and all. One of the things that we do here when we remove amalgam is we incorporate these other therapies, right? Yeah. We talked about FLOWpresso and how great it is before and after for getting patients out of sympathetic mode before, and also helping them regenerate and keeping them in parasympathetic after, and helping to eliminate toxins. What I love about FLOWpresso is the infrared feature as well as the compression feature for moving lymph. I absolutely love that, and patients love it. All of our patients love it. They come in here just to go on it. So it's really a wonderful addition. And you say, what does that have to do in a dental office? Well, a lot. It has a lot to do in a dental office. The other thing that we do is we incorporate these IV infusions. Yeah. And so we gave you high dose vitamin C. We gave you minerals. We gave you selenium. We also gave you oral selenium and charcoal to take prior to the removal extraction process, because selenium binds to heavy metals in the urinary tract, and charcoal binds to heavy metals through the digestive tract. So these are great. And then at the end of the drip, we gave you what's called a glutathione push to help clean out the cells. It's the number one way an IV glutathione push really helps to flush toxins out of the cells.
And it crosses blood-brain barrier when you give it as an IV bolus push. And so by doing that, you're pulling it from the brain. And then remember, glutathione is like a super antioxidant as well. And it's what the liver creates. Your liver creates glutathione.
Right.
And it should create 25 grams a day, but it probably, I'm going to guess at this point in our life, we probably need about 50 grams a day. Yeah. And so everybody should dose with glutathione. I know Dr. Curatola has a G, what's it called? G up, liposomal G. He's got an oral dropper for glutathione as well. And we often will give people that and as a binder. It's not really a binder. It's a mobilizer, but giving vitamin C and glutathione after FLOWpresso, before and after dental remediation, is key as well for allowing the body to bind and pull. And then as the practitioner, I'm going to be working with Desiree to come up with her protocol today to make sure that now that it's out of here, we get it out of all the tissues. And that's what Dr. C was saying earlier, over the next couple years, to get her leveled down to such that now it's very easy for her body to deal with, and her body's regenerating, and the tipping point has occurred that there's less in her body than there is more of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so one of the things that I became very interested in is I was using a lot of products from different manufacturers for supplemental support, and you were talking about glutathione. So I've become a huge fan in recent years of liposomal delivery.
Yeah.
So this liposomal spray is sublingual that I want you to use, by the way, sublingual spray. Glutathione, really good. It's all about bioavailability, you know, it's about that. I saw a video once of a big commercial vitamin C tablet, the patient swallowed it, and they actually had an x-ray, and you saw the tablet completely undigested going through the entire respiratory tract and out their rear end, you know, completely intact. So the patient had basically zero bioavailability. And I did the same thing to vitamin C. This is one of my favorites. So if there's any vitamin, if they had to take all the vitamins out of my medicine cabinet or out of my kitchen cupboard and leave just one, I would have to say it's still vitamin C, even though vitamin D has become really popular.
You go stand in the sun and get it though.
But it's vitamin C. Liposomal vitamin C is really good.
Optimal C from Dr. GC.
GC.
I just got this. I know. I was like, why can't I remember the name of these two products? Optimal G, Optimal C from Dr. GC.
Gerry Curatola.
It makes sense. Shoot, I'm here all week, folks. Actually, not really. I'm leaving. But that was awesome. And I think the last part of this equation is, anything else you want to say about your dental remediation?
No, and then we followed with the red light too.
Oh, yes.
Red light therapy.
The red light therapy, yep.
Red light is great because it stimulates mitochondrial activity. So, and you were pointing out, we were talking about hidden decay under old amalgam fillings, old mercury fillings. By the way, if your dentist calls those silver-colored fillings silver fillings, he is fraudulently misrepresenting the truth, or he or she, excuse me, because amalgams are 51 to 52% mercury. They are 26% silver. So if he's not going to call it an amalgam, or she should call it, and actually I have more women dentists than male dentists in my...
Exactly. I'm representing Dr.
I have definitely...
And Dr. Greco right now are definitely taking...
Dr. Greco, Dr. Singh.
Right.
I have a new Dr. McMahon. I have,
yes,
they're an amazing power team of Wonder Women biologic dentists. So really, what often happens when we take these amalgams, mercury fillings out, we see pools of decay when they've been in there because they percolate. So they expand when you drink something hot, they contract when you drink something cold, they actually crack teeth, and you get decay. What's really fascinating is that the x-ray did not show the decay spreading into the tooth next to it, and that's often what happens. So if your dentist is looking at you with amalgams year after year, saying, oh, those look fine, I urge you to have a organized protocol, because you really can't detox. Even liver detox is complicated if you have amalgams.
100%.
You can't detox.
Because you're constantly leaking, is what we constantly say. Like, you can fix your kitchen floor if the roof is leaking, but why don't you just fix the roof and then keep cleaning up the kitchen floor, and now you're not having to keep redoing it. And that's what Ian and I noticed in our practice when we first learned about biological dentistry. He had a certain slew of clients, and this was like 17 years ago now, that weren't necessarily resolving. And so he asked me to call them in. About half of them showed up, about 25 people showed up over the course of those 2 weeks. And we just looked in their mouths. We were like, we just want to look in your mouth. We just want to give you a little consult. We looked in their mouths, and 100% of them had amalgam fillings. And that's when we're like, crap, we got to be those people that send people to the dentist. And on it went. But the piece, it's like, I want to bring two things to highlight. One is, not every biological dentist is trained the same. I've heard the terms holistic, smart dentist. I know you can go to different types of trainings, but I would say know your dentist, just like we talked about in the very beginning. Know their training and know what's in your mouth. And when you're getting the work done, know beforehand, know in the middle, and know after what happened. Because honestly, as a healthcare practitioner, it frustrates me to have you call me and go, I need help with my case. Well, what's in your mouth? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, did you have an implant? I don't know. What kind of implant was it? I don't know. Well, please be informed. If it's happening to your body, be informed of what's happening. I know I wasn't, when I first got into this, I was like, I don't know, maybe do I have a filling? I don't know, how many do I have? I never really looked at it. I didn't consider this part of my body, which is bizarre because in animal science, this is the first thing we do is look in the mouth to see what the health of the animal is, which is why this all made sense to me at some level, intuitively, right? And so then there's this thing, okay, you got your BPAs, you got your amalgams, you got your lip ties. Now let's talk about teeth that have been pulled. Oh, I have all my teeth. Yes, but you had your wisdom teeth. Were they pulled out? So that's what happened to me. When I first had my first amalgam out, I was told I also had cavitational infections, which means where my teeth were pulled out from my wisdom teeth, holes were remaining still, no bone grew, and there was still infection. So I had that pulled out. This is Dr. Curatola's
cavitation protocol.
His protocol.
Yeah, so that's really interesting what we're finding now. By the way, anyone who wants an evaluation, I do routinely virtual consults. All I need is a cone beam and your
a cone beam from head and neck, get the proper cone beam.
A cone beam is a 3D scan of your head and neck. And that 3D scan enables me to see cavitations, mercury fillings, root canals, and cavitations around root canals, implants, obstructive sleep apnea, breathing issues that could be underlying. So I'm able to screen you for a lot of things and then try to get you into the best hands close to you. And also we have a lot of patients who come to us from New Zealand, from everywhere. Pennsylvania. And we have accommodations here. This is Rejuvenation Health, by the way. I just wanted to say.
Yes. Yeah. We're at Rejuvenation Health in East Hampton. He also has a location in Manhattan, soon to be located on 5th Avenue, currently on Park Avenue. This is where you get wellness, not just dentistry. And in Manhattan, soon, you'll also have wellness and dentistry. It's just been too small where he's at right now.
We're bringing medicine, dentistry, and wellness together the way it should be. One of the first people I knew to do that was Thomas Rao at the Paracelsus Clinic. And the first thing that Thomas would do...
Which they're not doing that anymore at the Paracelsus Clinic.
No.
Let's
it's
just
done.
put that out there. Okay.
Let's be clear. That's sad.
That was a long time ago.
That's sad.
Dr. Rao is now at Sonnenberg, Biomed Sonnenberg. Go ahead, keep going.
Thank you. That's right. It's sold to the Chinese or something.
Right.
But anyway, Thomas Rao, really amazing pioneer in biologic medicine. I've known him for many years, and the first thing he would do is look in your mouth.
Yeah, so it didn't matter what you went over for chronic illness, the first thing they did was a dental investigation first. And that's why you were the first person on my podcast, because I knew from Dr. Rao and many of my other teachers now in European biological medicine is that there's no way to heal the body without that.
Correct.
So when I learned that, and I learned I had a filling in my mouth, and I had at the time it was Panorex x-ray, and they said, oh, you have 4 cavitations. I had a dentist 16 years ago now. She went in and did an operation. And then cone beam became the golden standard. And at that point, I was working with Dr. Curatola. So I said, hey, Dr. Curatola, I had my cone beam. I'm going to send it to you and just verify that all my cavitations are healed. And I got this little video back of Dr. Curatola manipulating my scan. And he goes, hi, Kelly. Do you see this? See these 4 holes? How are you doing? Not good. Those are cavitations.
And that's because, it was really, honestly, you're bringing up a really interesting story, because when I started doing cavitation surgery, it was being done by cutting the gum in the back where the wisdom teeth were, cutting the gum, taking a dental drill, drilling into the hole, which is a cavitation, is a hole in the jaw. It's actually cavitational osteonecrosis. It's an area of dead bone, and it's a petri dish for parasites, mold, candida, Lyme spirochetes, whatever. But anyway, they used to drill in there, spray ozone around, and close it. And then they started using PRF, and the PRF would dissolve faster than the bone could regenerate. So when I started to look at this more objectively, I had three major concerns. I wanted to go into the cavitation atraumatically, not causing pain, not causing swelling, exceptional swelling. There is a little bit of swelling as a normal healing response. This is trauma. Yeah. So I wanted to be atraumatic, not traumatic. B, I wanted to make sure that I could thoroughly disinfect this defect, both clean out what's in there, but also disinfect the bone. Ozone, absolutely. But the laser has a setting that can do debridement with a radial, it's called a radial firing tip. So the laser light sprays in every direction like an old disco ball, and it kills all the bacteria in the bone. Then the third thing that I wanted to make sure that we do is get complete regeneration and healing. And that's dependent on three factors. One, you need a scaffold. That's why I use bone mineral in addition to the PRF. You need a scaffold. Two, we want to make sure we stimulate the surrounding bone to divide and heal. And that surrounding bone, the laser has a setting that actually stimulates mitotic division of the osteoblast. In English,
building.
In English, it means it helps the cells that make new bone divide faster. By separating the mitochondria, the cell divides, it's cell division, we grow bone back, so we have that scaffold. And then that milieu is then brought up, and then we have a lot of supportive therapies. FLOWpresso, we do post-op IV drips, and we make sure, this is where health coaching and working with patients to build their immune system up to be healthy enough to heal. So I get some really, really sick people who have terrible, terrible cavitations.
And he often injects the tonsils.
Yes. That's another whole...
Procaine, it's neural therapy, and it allows the body to drain.
Procaine and some lymphatic drainage homeopathics that we use in the tonsil area. The tonsils are the pull filters for the lymph in the head and neck. So, in the old days when the filters were clogged, they'd get large and backed up and they'd cut them out. And that we know now that the tonsils have a vital function for lymphatic draining and cleansing. And
Desiree and I were just talking this morning that oftentimes I see a lot of clogging up in the submandibular area after people get, even before amalgam remediation, people feel hardness up here. And that's one of the reasons that I really insist that the dentists that we work with inject the tonsils, or have a medical professional that's not the dentist, maybe they're not trained to do so, but maybe the medical professional in their area does, and they'll inject the tonsils, and then we get all this better drainage in the submandibulars drain, because you can't drain out the submandibulars until the tonsils drain out, and you can't drain those out until the termini drain out, which is why it's key to do the full body. So back to my story, thank you for that explanation. Dr. C said to me, you still have cavitations. And I said, no, Dr. C, you're confused. I already had that surgery. And I was just confirming that it healed. And he goes, no, Kelly, you're confused. What I'm saying is you need surgery again. And I was like, well, I've done a lot of work. I have a lot of terrain. I've worked on my terrain tremendously. I've done a lot of CRTs, HRVs, live blood. I've watched it heal. You and I both meditate. We both believe in the power of the body. Can you give me a year or two, and are we in a position that we can allow my body to heal this on its own? And God bless his soul, he said, yeah, let's do it. So I took created a homeopathic for me that had a bunch of things in it to allow my body to grow bone. I meditated on it, which basically said I set the intention and I allowed it. I did not put a lot of focus on it, to be honest with you. But I will say that for the next couple of years, anytime a client was in front of me and I had to talk about cavitations, which is pretty often, like 7 times a week, easily, I was sitting, or you could just grow bone like I am. So I was constantly assuming that this was gonna happen. But my good friend, Dr. Curatola, every time I saw him, he was like, hey, we need you to do another comb, make sure you don't need cavitation. I was like, yeah. And it finally got to the point during COVID, at the end of COVID, that he was like, okay, it's time. Let's look at your comb beam. And it was in this office. And I remember walking back to that, and I was like, I don't know if I've done enough work. I really don't.
You did create regeneration.
Yeah. So we did
She
that.
did have
comb beam,
regeneration.
and literally don't need surgery anymore. It took 2 years. And I'm not saying everybody can do that. But I'm just saying that if you put your body in the right position and allow it, that's the beauty of what the body can do. I had infection in there previously, then pulled out, so there was no infection left there. It was just purely lack of bone. And by giving it time and intention, it grew on its own.
You know, it's so interesting because I'm thinking about that whole experience back then. You actually had regeneration, and it goes to the fourth and fifth level of regeneration and healing that we talk about in biologic medicine, which is the psycho-emotional component and the spiritual component. Because, you know, faith is believing in what you don't see and being certain of what you hope for. And I used to always think, you know, I remember like as a little kid in Catholic school, and, you know, and they said, and Jesus said, surely if you have the faith, you can tell that mountain to move from there to there. And I was like, that is crazy. How could you tell
faith
a mountain?
The size of mustard.
How could you tell a mountain to move? You know, and the reality is like all matter is just a bunch of spinning electrons. We're energy. We are energy beings. And I have seen. I saw my father in a coma from a massive heart attack when I was 13 years old, and I saw my mother kneeling and praying and believing because the doctor told her he's a 20% chance of making it. He was in a coma. And my mother was just crying out and praying. I'll never forget, it was a vivid experience from 13 years old. And she was praying, God, please don't take him. I need him. The children are young. I need him. And she had this amazing faith because her life story was incredible. She was stricken with tuberculosis and cut off from everyone for a year of her life at 18 years old because of a janitor in an office she was working in that was coughing and all this. So faith is incredible. The next day after I witnessed that, my father came out of a coma, totally healed, went back to his and lived for 23 more years. So what you did with setting your intention is so important. And the reason I wanted to say this is I have stopped from doing surgery on a patient, on a cavitation surgery on a patient, because she did not believe that she was going to get better. She was sick for 6 years with chronic Lyme, couldn't get out of bed, and she thought, oh, well, and I stopped before I started, and I just looked at her, and I said, Erica, you know, I have to ask you a very important question, and it's going to seem strange, but do you believe that you're going to get better? And she started crying and said, I just don't know. I just don't know. And I said, well, unless you believe you're going to get better, you're not going to get better. One of the first books, when I was at the Harvard Medical School program in complementary and alternative medicine back in 1996, one of the first books I read was a book by a medical doctor named Bernie Siegel. And it was called Love, Medicine, and Miracles. And he just observed patients in his oncology practice. He observed patients and he observed who got better, who stayed the same, and who died. And the ones who died were the ones who didn't believe they were going to get better. The ones who stayed the same didn't really have that support network, weren't meditating, weren't doing things. They were there and they were sort of like in the middle. Well, let's see what happens, you know, but they weren't down. And then the ones that recovered were the ones that had such a positive mindset. That's like Bruce Lipton, the biology of belief. What you believe can change your DNA.
Well, my heart is about to explode right now with everything you're saying. Two things. One is that my mother made us go to church and pray for my father. And when I was 7, he was given 3 months to live. And he didn't die till I was 20.
Wow.
And there was many times I called him a medical miracle. And looking back in my life, I know that my parents are here, because my mom's still here, to teach me 2 things. One is physical medicine and allopathic medicine is a failing model. I watched my father go through cancer 7 times, have Hodgkin's disease, have chemo, radiation, blood clots in the lung, kidney stones, and I watched him die at 55 years old in a hospital bed, having not spoken after 5 months, having his mouth suctioned out, being catheterized, and laying in a bed unable to communicate with any of us at 55. And then I watched my mother pray for my father and make us pray for him year in and year out. And I watched that miracle until he was ready to go. And I know part of my story, a huge part of my story, and these 2 people are so involved in my story, as is Ian and Silas, is to get people to understand how the body really works.
Exactly.
And until you are in the place that I was when my cavitation, highlighted by Dr. C, was like, hey, you still have a little more work to do. I went, okay, I got to do more work. Then I did all the physical medicine. I did the IVs, I did the injections, I did all the things. Where I'm at now, and what Dr. C was just highlighting, what Desiree and I have done, and Dr. Christine Schaffner and so many of my friends have done, is worked with Dr. Joe Dispenza. And understanding what Joe Dispenza is doing is proving what Dr. C just said, and what Bruce Lipton's work has proving at the University of Southern California in San Diego with Dr. Hemal Patel, and proving that by meditating, you're changing your epigenetics. And we now live in the future of healthcare. That's what I was saying earlier. The future of healthcare is about frequency. It's about your energy. And as Dr. C said, we are just particles until we are waves. And when we become waves, it becomes matter. And that all starts in the thought life. And Dr. Hemal Patel, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but what I'm saying is that when I was at his event just a week and a half ago, Dr. Joe Dispenza's advanced retreat, which I highly recommend doing that inner work, because your body is the only thing that heals. And if you want to watch miracles happen, be at these events. There are more miracles happen at these type of events than I've ever seen at medical conferences. And it is incredible to know that this scientist, this neurosurgeon who thought Dr. Joe Dispenza was crazy to think that you could change your cells, a year and a half into research, having tons of research and tons of subjects, because a lot of us are willing to give everything we have to science, our blood, our saliva, and our poop, to assure what this, to test the biomarkers of what's happening when you do this, when you meditate, when you allow the healing. And it's not, oh, I sit in meditation. We live in meditative states. We live in the flow state, and you learn how to get your body to be in alignment of flow state. So everything is in flows, and everything is allowing for your highest good and for your healing. And this is the future. And so not everybody yet is where I was at, but thank goodness I was there to showcase all the aspects of what biological medicine is really bringing to you. It's the true healing from the inside.
Western medicine, which you're talking about, conventional medicine, they recognize biologic, they recognize biochemical, and to a certain extent, energetic. Yes, we use devices that work on the field and energy.
X-rays,
right? Exactly.
Our ionization of energy,
right? MRI,
like,
nuclear magnetic resonance.
Everybody's like, oh, what's energy?
So Western medicine is really good, and they're really good at diagnostics. Thank you.
A feather from above.
Feather.
We have no idea where this feather came from in the middle of this podcast.
So, but what we've been talking about for the past few minutes is really the 4th and 5th level of biologic medicine, which is psycho-emotional and spiritual.
Right.
So you're talking about, you set intention, and you're actually able to positively impact regeneration in your own body in a cavitation space. So what I see myself doing, and what Desiree does and what you do, is we help people heal themselves.
That's right.
Because we have this divine capacity to self-regulate and heal. I help eliminate a huge part of the body that was often disconnected. I always, in my lectures, I talk about how dentistry was disconnected from the 100%. Body 150 years ago with dental school, and most dentists are mechanics of teeth. Drill them, fill them, bill them. And I wanted to be a physician of the mouth from when I came out of that. And I always knew it seemed unnatural that I would be disconnected from the rest of the body. Now I really believe this is the most important part right here. This is where 90% of toxicity and inflammation in the human body exists before it goes everywhere else in the body. And that there's this bi-directional flow. So,
and it clogs up your lymphatics. And
correct. Where's my book?
to bring it all back real quick, Desiree, FLOWpresso, why'd you create it?
It was the consumer need. You know, when you're a clinician in the field, especially of lymphatics, you're constantly seeing, you know, these issues that are occurring, but medically we weren't catching up and being able to manage it fast enough. Like you always say, the issues in the tissues, and we're putting more stuff in than we are getting out. And lymphatics is, it's always been like the back burner to the vascular, like it's kind of been the poor cousin and no one really puts a lot of time into it.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
Sorry, that's an expression we use in New Zealand.
I love her expressions in New Zealand. She's got some good ones.
The issue is the tissue. I love that one.
That was mine. Yeah, that was Kat.
Oh, you did that one?
Yeah, she did. And so, you know, coming here, it was such an enlightening experience to be teaching over here, because so many understood biological or functional medicine, and they really saw the importance of lymphatics. And you know, Dr. Jeff Drobot, who's down in Arizona, he was probably the one that pushed me the hardest. And I think it was more out of, you know, getting the right practitioners, being able to sustain them, keeping them coming, and all that sort of thing that was the initial drive. But then it was also that continuity of care in lymphatics. It is a unique way of working, so you need to be able to do it well to get the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And then it wasn't until I was in the middle of the testing of the prototype, which totally embarrassed now because it's like, you know, terrible when I think about what I first created, but you know, there's always growth and improvement. But what we started to see was the switch in the heart rate variability. And I remember sending it to Dr. Drobot, and he said to me, "No, you've made a mistake." And I went, "What do you mean I've made a mistake? I've done this like 8 times." And he goes, "No, go back and do more." So we were measuring this heart rate variability through a technology called Nerve Express, and we were seeing the switch in the autonomic nervous system, and that's when he said, "You're onto something. This is big." So that's when, you know, understanding. I've worked in cancer for 15 years now. My own sister went through stage 4. So she had a bowel that metastasized to liver, and yes, she's still here 4 years later. So that gives you, she's taken every aspect of, except her teeth, which we're on to next, the biological side of everything, from the emotional, the spiritual, the physical, you name it, she's done it. And yes, she's in FLOWpresso every week, because my thing was watching cancer was people living in this heightened state of constant, you know, fight, flight, or freeze or survival, and that was, they never really were recovering. And lymphatics was such a key aspect of getting rid of the byproduct that was in the body, but more importantly, boosting immunity. You raise lymphocyte activity when you increase lymphatic flow. So that's the big story into one. And you know, I don't talk a lot about the up there because it's we just take it for granted in New Zealand.
Because you're down under.
Yeah, we're at the bottom of the earth. We kind of just take this stuff like it's normal to have messages. And you know, I went through quite a traumatic time with 3 of my clients who had survived 2-3 years longer than they were ever supposed to. All passed away a week of each other.
Oh my goodness.
And that was almost made me give up on working in the field, because it was just so traumatic to it. And one was a 16-year-old boy. He was the most profound young man. He wrote this incredible speech about his Māori, so in our cultural arena. And so he was speaking about this, it's now time to lay down your sword and use your words. And he had written this incredible speech, and at his funeral, there was over 600 people from every tribe, culture, you know, from gang members through to, you know, people of, you know, sort of in business and everything. And you just sat there watching this one child who brought all these people together.
Amazing.
So it was very, very overwhelming. But that's when you start to realize how we're not providing this full care. And thank goodness, all I can say is thank goodness I had the knowledge I did, because I was able to walk my sister through this whole experience. But she was prepared to do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about diet all the time. Yes, it's really important. We know how important it is for our teeth. And, you know, fortunately I don't eat you call it candy, we call it lollies. You know,
Right.
I'm not a sweet tooth, so I think that's probably what saved me from having maybe 20 and cavities and all the rest, you know, or everything else going on. So, you know, for me, being able to understand that diet is only one aspect of it. And we talk about the Te Papa Whao, which is the 4 pillars of health. So in the model in New Zealand, so it's Te Whare Tapa Whā. And what it is they talk about 4 pillars. They talk about mental and emotional, spiritual. Mental, physical, spiritual, but they also talk about whānau. Whānau is your family. So whānau is your people you're with. So if you're with people that aren't supporting you, acknowledging you, surrounding you. So one of the things I did with my sister is we eliminated everyone in her life that wasn't going to be on the path she was about to walk. And they all had their purpose to be around her. Like they all had their network of what their role was and what they were to do. We had people sending in positive quotes each week. You know, like we had everything like that because your community, your whānau,
Yes.
is so important to healing as well. So that's
Thich Nhat Hanh said, community is the guru of the future.
Yeah.
You need that network.
But it's through biological, well, you know, I didn't really know that word, that was a buzzword to us in New Zealand, but it's becoming more and more recognised. But, you know, through understanding all these things is why FLOWpresso came about, because a lot of it I could not say it was just me. Because most people go, how in the world did you do this? Like, you're not an engineer, you're not anything, but you just, it's like it's like you just start to trust, you get the messages and you take it through. And now to come here, finally, after 2.5, almost 3 years, you know, to be able to be around everyone and hear the stories of the differences, like the experiences we had in Boise at the conference. You know, one beautiful woman felt joy for the first time in 3 years after losing her husband. You know, I mean, I can't even explain how that feels for me. It's such an incredible experience. So I'm so grateful that I have my team that also supports my product. But yeah, so that's a very long story short. Sorry, everyone.
No, it's
I'm so glad you got to speak.
It's why I'm so honored to represent FLOWpresso and to talk so much about Revitin, because for me, FLOWpresso and Revitin, and outside of some minerals, because you always need minerals and you need sunshine and nature, and we are nature, but I think Revitin is such a key, as well as FLOWpresso, for long-term health and foundational. What do I need to do for my life every day? Be flexible. Stop wiping out all your oral microbiome with a crappy toothpaste out there. I'm going to let Dr. C talk about this. And get into the flow state. And if you need an assist by doing it through FLOWpresso, then do that until you've entrained yourself enough to where you know you need it. I mean, I was going to say until you don't need it, but then I was like, no, I still need it. I still love it. And now I just know when I need it and how often I need it in here. And I do all the yoga, the massages. I love all of the body work. I live my walk. I walk my walk, I talk my talk, and I live it. And Revitin for me and FLOWpresso are like the foundations to assure that I know all the other work I'm doing, it's just now optimizing my health. I'm no longer interested in maintaining. I want to optimize. So I use FLOWpresso and Revitin to optimize, and minerals. That's it.
So can I just do an advertisement for this?
Yeah. An advertisement.
Well, no, it's a story. So when I had my teeth done, of course I had done one day and right, so my gums were really sore and are obviously surrounding the certain areas. And when they originally did this to clean my teeth actually I was in there 3 days. The first day was cleaning. They put this around my gums, and I was able to notice quickly how it changed, how sensitive they were. So over the last 2 days, I have just rubbed this throughout all my gums and around my teeth, and the pain has been more or less non-existent. And it's been absolutely amazing just to use it even from that aspect, let alone cleaning your teeth. So now over to Gerry to explain the product.
Dr. C?
I'm not paying for this.
Dr. Gerry. Become too
So when I finished the Harvard Medical School program in complementary and alternative medicine, when it was called back in '96, then it became complementary and integrative medicine, then integrative medicine, then functional medicine, then biological medicine,
and soon to be coherent field medicine.
Coherent field medicine.
Yes, Dr. Schaffner and non-Dr. Kelly Kennedy.
I woke up. I had just come back from Deaconess Hospital up in Boston, and I woke up in the morning, and after going through that program and hearing all the speakers and everything, I was like, oh my God, toothpaste was invented by soap makers 100 years ago. Nobody knows what they're doing in oral care. So you have the majors, right? Colgate, P&G, even Unilever, which used to be Lever Brothers. They basically were detergent companies, and they made flavored detergent. And in the 1970s, the germ theory became very big in the mouth because they would like take these little slides and you see all these bugs swimming around. And as a matter of fact, a lot of holistic dentists, which is really what they practiced. Biologic dentistry is a whole different philosophy of practice. And that originated more from Germany and Switzerland with those 5 levels that we spoke about a lot. And hopefully, you and I both will be teaching a lot of people these principles to understand them in the practice and care of patients. Because there are many dentists out there who are, they're calling themselves biologic, and they really don't even understand the philosophy of care.
And if they don't know what it is, go to brmi.online and come to our event in October of 2022.
Oh, that's
or whenever 2023 is, but this is how you learn this stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, I had 2 things. I've got to change what people brush their teeth with.
Yeah.
And the first thing, there was a study from Japan back in the 1970s that biopsied diseased gums. And we saw, this is even before the Human Microbiome Project, it was 1998 I started my research on this. And we saw that the gums were deficient in 2 key nutrients. Vitamin C, which is related, low vitamin C is related to scurvy and sailors and all that. So they got this terrible condition of the gums. Vitamin C is essential. It's one of the most highly used vitamins. And then the other one was coenzyme Q10, which was relatively unknown in the late 90s. It was isolated in 1957 in Wisconsin, and it's the cofactor in the manufacture of ATP. Basically, it's what enables ATP is the gas in the tank for every cell, right? We use ATP.
ATP is your energy that the mitochondria creates as a through the Krebs cycle. Some of you who took biology were like, oh no, the Krebs cycle. Well, get wrapped into bioregulatory medicine. It's like, all you do is study the Krebs cycle and understand how energy is created in the body.
My daughter just finished organic chemistry. She knows it well.
Yeah.
So anyway, the big thing was take toothpaste out of the detergent world, out of the, and put it in the nutritional world. So what Desiree did in rubbing it on, this is edible. So every ingredient that I started with I actually developed this with a dentist who was a classmate of mine in dental school. We both went into a master's program in holistic health in 1983 when we came out of dental school with, it was a night program just to learn holistic health, which was like voodoo in 1983.
Sure.
So I went from that, and then the Harvard program, which basically showed me that the mouth is a mess and nobody really understands it. But what we did is we put all the ingredients, David, Chuck, and I put all the ingredients, we basically started from scratch. It took us about 3 years to get Revitin to work as a toothpaste because it was like goo. And then we got it to function as a toothpaste, and everything in here you can swallow, so it's safe to eat. Do you know in 1998, that was the year the FDA put a poison warning on toothpaste with chemical fluoride because a major manufacturer, Procter & Gamble, came out with a product called Crest Sparkle. It was fluorescent blue, bubblegum flavored, and it had sparkles in it. So fluoride fatalities in children went up 280%.
Oh my gosh. This
is before the internet, or like I like to say, Al Gore invented the internet. Before Al Gore invented the internet, no, he didn't. The reality is that very quietly, this was a problem because they were making it bubblegum flavored, so kids were swallowing it. There was enough fluoride in a full-size tube of toothpaste to be fatal to 2 children under 5.
And
horrific.
that's still on the shelf today, just so everybody knows, that toothpaste.
Is it really?
Well, I don't know what that is, but fluoride in all the toothpaste.
Yes.
I'm talking about fluoride, I apologize.
Shortly after 1998, parents were coming to me in my practice and saying, why is there a poison warning on toothpaste? That kids are sticking it in their mouth. And it says, keep out of reach of children. Can you imagine? Keep out of reach of children. Use only a pea-sized, if more than a pea-sized amount is swallowed, contact poison control immediately. So, I mean, why do we have toxic things in a product we're putting inside our body? So that in itself really, really threw me. And I immediately started, we got 3 patents on vitamin C and CoQ10 in toothpaste. And then we started putting vitamin D3, vitamin E, vitamin K, K2, D3, K2, which affects enamel metabolism. But then we started experimenting, and we did 3, and we have right now, we have a 50-patient double-blind, randomized double-blind clinical trial. And we reduce inflammation by over 50% in less than 2 weeks. We stop gums bleeding, sometimes gums stop bleeding in a weekend. And I can't put it on here because the FDA would tell me to call it a drug because it's called a structure function claim. So I just let the patient say it. We don't have any advertisement that says that. But if you use this, what we've learned since the advent of the Human Microbiome Project, which began in 2002 to 2007, we learned that basically the bacteria in the mouth that Listerine said kill germs on contact, and Colgate Total, which had a non-biodegradable pesticide called triglycan inside it, they said, oh, we kill germs. They were going to call it the first antibiotic toothpaste, Colgate Total. They had a campaign to call it the first antibiotic tooth. Can you imagine brushing your teeth with an antibiotic every day? And then they took that out right away because the problem of antibiotic resistance was emerging. In the late 90s, we realized we were creating superbugs. MRSA, shutting down gymnasiums and schools. Methicillin-resistant Staph aureus is a superbug. We create superbugs by the overuse of antibiotics and antimicrobials.
And just quickly also speak to the aggressiveness of, like, when I met you, I was like, oh, I knew not to use toothpaste. Well, actually, before I met you, I never used toothpaste probably for 15 years. When Ian came home from that first seminar where he met you, and he was like, oh, Ian never comes home from seminars like, I just met the greatest guy. He never says that. He came home, I just met the greatest guy, and he's got this toothpaste. And I tried it, I was like, it's orange. I don't like it. I said, because I'm used to using hydrogen peroxide, cover your ears, and baking soda. I'd used it for 16 years because when I was a teenager, I just instinctively knew that I liked those toothpaste. So I started just using it, and I'd almost probably made my teeth almost translucent. And it took me about 4 or 6 months to start to use this, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to like it. And then I started to notice my teeth were less sensitive. And then I went and met Dr. Curatola in person. And I was really like, oh, now I understand oral microbiome. I'm so much better. And then about 5, 6 months later, we were in Germany together. And we had all eaten some German food for dinner. And I was in a hotel room with a bunch of people. And all of a sudden, I see Dr. Curatola go into his bathroom. And he's taking his toothpaste and he's putting in his mouth. And I was like, what are you doing? What's happening right now? And he was like, oh, dinner was just too much. I'm trying to get some probiotics. And I'm like, you're eating your toothpaste? And he was like, well, yeah, because it's like probiotic. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was
and
one
now Silas is constantly going into the bathroom. We're like, what are you doing? He's like, I just like a little Revitin right now. I was like, it's not candy. But I love that that's what his go-to.
It was so interesting because I'm trying to think of his name right now. He took this product, and there was a product on the market prior to Revitin. It still is now, and it's a very good product, but it doesn't promote microbial homeostasis, which is what Revitin does. What does that mean? It promotes balance of this natural ecology. Martha Stewart had me on her television show, I think in 2008, and she said, I understand you're doing all this research in oral care, and tell us about it. And I said, well, Martha, toothpaste was invented by soap makers 150 years ago. You know, my mother said if I said a dirty word, she sticks soap in my mouth, but I was brushing with it, you know, and everybody laughed. And I said, and then in the 1970s, we put bug killers in there.
Yeah.
And I said, it's time for doctors. What we know now is that antimicrobials, antibiotics, are creating a major problem because we don't understand the relationship we have to microbes in and on our bodies. We need to live in peace together. So my big mantra became make peace with your microbes, not war. So I said, doctors need to get out of the pesticide business, Martha. And I said, and what we need, and she loves Revitin, and what we need is organic gardening in the mouth.
Yeah.
And that's what Revitin is. Revitin is organic gardening in the mouth. I've seen so much insanity in oral care in my career as a dentist. Charcoal products, clay products, stupid junk science, no real studies. Even the majors don't do real studies. And that's why we've cranked up our studies 50 patients now. And I can't wait to get those results. Those will be out in 2023. So Revitin is really designed to balance the natural ecology of your mouth. And when you do that, when you respect who we are and what we're made of, we're a compositive species. They call it a holobiont, I forget, holobiont, which is a composite of man and microbe. Okay, the microbes in our bodies outnumber our human cells by 10 to 1. The genetic information is 100 to 1. So basically we're walking bacteria containers in a certain extent, but even if you go back and, you know, we've talked about some eschatology, you know, and what faith is and all that. Well, I was at a holistic dentistry meeting. I was actually at the International Academy of Oral Medicine Toxicology giving a lecture on the oral microbiome. And I was sitting having a meal, a lunch, with a dentist who was also a biblical scholar. And he had studied in Israel. He went through Aramaic and Hebrew and this and that. And the verse in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 or 8, which says, God took from the dust of the earth and breathed his spirit into it, and we became mind, body, spirit. The word is not dust. The word is actually slime, and loosely translate to like what would be slime. And most scientists agree the earth was covered with microbial slime before we were ever here. So if God took from the slime of the earth, which was microbes, and breathed the spirit in, it's no wonder that the mitochondria in the nucleus of every cell in our body that holds our genetic information, our genetic signature, is in that mitochondria. It's the same shape as a bacterium, it divides the same, and it holds the genetic information the same.
And I'm just going to summarize with saying, if you want to get close to God, do exactly what he did, was breathe.
Yeah.
Flow state is about breath. And in the spaces between, what a heart rate variability is looking at is the spaces between the heartbeats. And that's where breath occurs. So
it's no wonder, you know, mind, body, spirit is not a, and I teach all my young dentists this, you know, and then what I love to do is mentor and teach. And I have young dentists come to me from all over. I had a young woman who's actually going to be starting with us in this center out here in East Hampton. And I love educating them into the things they didn't learn in dental school.
Yeah.
Which is that we are mind, body, spirit. We treat the whole person. And those 5 levels of self-regulation and healing, biologic, bioenergetic, biochemical, energetic, bioenergetic, psycho-emotional, and spiritual, those 5 levels are all how we're made. And you know, we know that this field is actually our spirit. And in Ayurveda, they call it prana, and Chinese medicine, they call it chi.
And we're going to just call it energy.
Know it and respect that. And, you know, not for anything, but the profound effects that Revitin has is because it does respect all of that.
Absolutely.
So his name is Wolfgang
Haas?
Haas.
Oh, Wolfgang Haas? What did he?
Wolfgang Haas said,
yes.
He was at a biologic medicine meeting, and he said, your product, you know, I measure the bioresonance of products and and Walida resonated at 7,000, I forget what the units were called. He said 7,000. He goes, I will take this back to Switzerland and I will test it. And you know what he did? A month later, I got an email, and the first words were, "Congratulations. Dear Dr. Curatola, congratulations. I have just tested your product, and I must tell you, it is extraordinary. It resonated he goes, I told you, Waleda, W-A-L-E-D-A, it's a very good company. They had a product that resonated at 7,000. He said, your product resonated at 25,000. 25,000.
Because it's in the flow state. That's why. Because it creates flow state. So this has been awesome. Thank you. Truly, from my heart to yours, this is how your body works. Take a deep breath, because that's all you really need. Have a wonderful day. We love you. You got this.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of The Beats. And as your host, Kelly Kennedy, truly from my heart to yours, thank you for your time and your attention today. And if this did resonate with you, please do leave some comments. We would love to hear from you. And if this further you think would resonate with somebody that you know, please do go ahead and share that and hit that notification button so you know when The Beats is available to you. We do some live things every once in a while. And as always, we pray that this information today was not only foundational, but raised some questions for you and helped you be empowered to take actionable, profound steps toward regeneration, because your body is the only thing that heals. And that is our message here on The Beats. Thanks again for listening and for sharing. Have a great day.